We begin with a little-told story about COVID vaccine injuries. It's the story of Maddie, one of the children who took part in Pfizer's vaccine study on children. It's a remarkable account of what happened when Maddie got very, very sick, leading to accusations that Pfizer, the FDA, and the study leaders tried to bury her case. In summer of 2020, Stephanie DeGarry and her family learned an important clinical trial was about to be launched at nearby Cincinnati Children's Hospital. It would test Pfizer's experimental COVID-19 vaccine on 12 to 15-year-olds to see if it was safe and effective. The DeGarrys, firmly pro-vaccine, didn't hesitate to let their children take part. Among 3 siblings, 12-year-old Maddie alone was chosen to get 2 doses of Pfizer's vaccine rather than a harmless placebo. It proved a fateful and debilitating roll of the dice.
Her second dose was January 20th of 2021. She had what she described as electrical shocks going up and down her spine. She said she felt like her heart was being ripped out. So chest pain. She had severe abdominal pain. She was hunched over when she walked through the door. Her toes and her fingers were white, and they were like, when you touched them, they were ice cold and painful.
Did you think right away that this was probably a vaccine reaction?
100%. There was nothing wrong with her prior to that.
Before long, Maddie lost feeling in her legs. Here she's scooting on the floor and using her hands to lift her legs. DeGarry says she was shocked when the lead study doctor offered no help. She found herself reluctantly following the advice of physicians who insisted Maddie's paralysis, seizures, passing out, all of it were caused by anxiety.
When she was in her hospital stay in April, they treated her horribly. They treated her like a crazy person.
Maddie was rushed to the ER 9 times. By the time she was hospitalized for the 3rd time, she had heart problems, seizures, was passing out, vomiting, unable to swallow, and was fed through a tube. She was in the hospital that time for a month and a half.
Hey, welcome back.
I need to take this out. Okay. Studies are conducted to identify and investigate any health risks. Maddie's reaction was a giant red flag for Pfizer's vaccine. But the DeGarrys say those involved seem more interested in blaming Maddie's illnesses on anything but the obvious culprit. While Maddie was fighting for her life, the FDA granted emergency use of Pfizer's vaccine for kids as young as age 12, based on the study Maddie took part in. In a press release, Pfizer reported its vaccine had a favorable safety profile observed across 6 months of safety follow-up data after the 2nd dose. No mention of what happened to Maddie. Parents across the country started rushing to get their children the heavily promoted shots.
I took a trip up there to the North Pole. I went there and I vaccinated Santa Claus myself.
Government / the drug company and study folks did not want to acknowledge this as a vaccine adverse event.
No, they did not.
And you feel they were not honest about the reporting of...
They reported it as functional abdominal pain, so it's basically a stomach ache that you can't explain.
Congress, heavily funded by pharmaceutical industry donations, has avoided the subject of vaccine injuries for years. There were no official hearings on COVID vaccine side effects.
Neither Pfizer, the FDA, or the CDC has ever talked to us or attempted to. We have never heard anything from them.
By then, COVID vaccines have been given to young people for 6 months, with sometimes tragic results.
He got vaccinated on a Friday, and on Sunday, Sunday morning at 1 a.m., was on life support. He was diagnosed with myocarditis. Doctors, of course, would not say it was vax injured, but why would a 6-year-old have myocarditis?
My son Sean played hockey his whole life. To continue to play hockey, he had to get a vaccine. He took 1 Pfizer shot and died 33 days later.
The DeGarrys gave the government and those who experimented on Maddie permission to talk with us about her case. However, Pfizer, Cincinnati Children's Hospital, and lead study scientist Dr. Robert Frank declined comment and wouldn't answer our questions. Same with CDC, which also wouldn't tell us how many adverse event reports in children it's received for COVID vaccines.
July of 2022, we saw a neurologist that specializes in autoimmune reactions that cause neurologic problems. And she was diagnosed with chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy. So basically, that's where your body attacks your nerves.
That's an immune disorder known to develop after other vaccinations, too, and is reported in other COVID vaccine recipients after Maddie. In small advances, DeGarry says there's hope Maddie will eventually recover, though the family will never be the same.
It's a story of opening up my eyes, seeing things. I trusted the government, I trusted doctors, I trusted hospitals. What I thought they were is not what they are.
We asked federal health officials if they agree with Pfizer's published claim that, quote, there were no vaccine-related serious adverse events in their study on children, but they declined to answer the question.
Auf der anderen Seite müssen wir auch vermitteln, was ja auch so ist, die Impfungen sind halt mehr oder weniger nebenwirkungsfrei. Das muss immer wieder gesagt werden. Das sind die Leute, die sich jetzt nicht impfen lassen wollen. Das sind ja auch zum Teil Opfer der schäbigen Desinformation in den sozialen Medien gewesen.